Hey everybody, welcome back to the Audiomo podcast. I'm joined by my regular co-host for today, Mr. Dave Nelson. We're going to be talking about a few things that are more in Dave's wheelhouse that I'm actually the one that has a little experience with so far. But how are you doing tonight, Dave?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, it's been a fun week actually, and had a good day. Hung out and got some food and went book shopping with the fam. So that was fun.
I just find it funny you said, I had a good day, I ate food. I mean, I would
Yeah.
hope you would eat food on any given day. But speaking of bite-sized things, when we were talking about what, the topic of tonight's little podcast would be, you said you wanted to talk about the Mini Soldano. I have a Mini Soldano. What do you want to know? What do you want to talk about?
Well, so obviously, like everybody else, I hopped on YouTube yesterday and saw the 100 SLO mini SLO videos or whatever. I was actually kind of surprised. I think the first one I hopped on was Fluff's, only because I know he has an actual SLO 100 and he didn't compare them, which I'm like, cool, is really the only reason I clicked this video. I mean, his little mix thing sounded good, and I was, I was definitely like, okay, cool, it sounds cool. I know that there's the Bogner, and then there's the Friedman, the other little guys, right?
And the Diesel.
And the Diesel, right? Tool, yeah. The Diesel I thought sounded pretty cool. The Friedman was all right. I didn't love the Bogner, and they all kind of have like their own like quirkiness to them, like they're clearly like imitating the originals, but they're just like a little strange, and I don't know. From his video, the SLO sounded fine, but like it's sort of one of those things where it's like, unless you put them next to each other, like I don't really know what the differences are, and he did it with the SLO plugin, and they were really, really close, so I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? That you have the SLO plugin, right? So have you put them next to each other?
I have. I will say this to anybody who is curious if they want to hear a comparison with the actual amp versus the Mini. Rabia did that, and the only reason I knew Fluff didn't do that is because I read it in Rabia's comments. I don't typically there's not many YouTubers I watch, but I knew that Rabia, I could count on him to do both, and sure enough he actually did. So I'm glad I did not click the other one. I would have been not been pleased about that.
Yeah.
But
To be fair though, the reason I clicked Fluff's and not Rabia's is because Rabia's is 40 minutes long and I had other stuff going on.
I listened to it while I was doing other stuff, so that's funny.
Yeah,
That's how it kind of worked out. But okay, so we've talked about mini amps a few times, and when I had talked about them in the past, I still kind of feel this way. Like they're little novelty toys in a sense, because they're never going to capture the full tone. They're never going to capture that essence of whatever. But I will say this: after actually playing it and playing it at volume in the room. First thing is, the damn thing is legitimately loud, Dave. The thing is, it is no joke when they say that you could gig with it. If you were playing and you didn't need any clean, you could absolutely get away with gigging with one of these things, and you would be just fine. I thought it sounded really good for lead tones on the overdriven setting with the volante as a little bit of delay and reverb mixed in. I was just like, I'm like, this is just good enough. Like, I'm like, this sounds great for just sitting and playing in the room. And the other thing that I like about this thing, if you just chuck it in your bag when you're gonna go out and play a gig, if all hell something happens to your amp or something happens to your rig, it literally plugs and plays. So would you have the exact tone? No. But would you have to stop playing your gig? No. So you kind of get like a double purpose out of it. And I've seen a few people complaining about a few things on it. As far as, one thing that did make me laugh, you'll get a kick out of this because you're similar to me with this mindset with when people are hypocrites and they don't realize they're being it. A guy was just obviously on our favorite forum in the world ranting about how it's Chinese junk and this, that, and the other, just so inferiorly made. Chinese, I said that quite a few times. His picture on the forum is of a Chinese-made Epiphone Les Paul custom. Of course it is.
Yeah.
I didn't have the heart to bring it up, but I just, you see that stuff and you laugh. I don't think that these are terrible value. And the reason I don't, and one of the other things that I want to say about this, and compared to the Tone Master, it's I think, what is it, a fifth of the price, a fourth of the price? You get an FX loop. That in alone, like, why Fender did not include an effects loop on that tone master. Is whenever they do the revision, it has to have it. Like it absolutely it has to have it. But the fact that this does have an effects loop, even if you hated the sounds that come out of this, if you're somebody like you and you run a Helix or an HX Stomp or whatever, you could bypass the entire thing and just run whatever sounds you want straight through that. So like the flexibility that something like this gives you, it's more than just a novelty toy at that point. Do I think this thing sounds, inspiring? Am I going to track with this thing? Absolutely not. Like, no, I'm not. But I don't regret the purchase. And I think for $250, when you consider, dude, the Optimus pedal costs more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't get 30 watts of clean output. Yeah.
No. So, I mean, and they're not direct competitors, but it's just putting things in perspective, and especially at a time where everything is $1 billion new. But I don't know. I don't think it's a bad deal at all. I think it's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah. So obviously, the second something like this comes out, you want to go and, how does it compare to the original? Obviously, like you think the same thing when we saw the plugin, right? From Neural DSP, it's like, hey, how does it hold up? But the plugin is like a totally different value prop, right? Like the plugin's supposed to be like, you can track with this, like this could stop you from needing an SLO 100, which arguably, like for me would never really be an option to like gig with. Like I would never take an SLO 100 out like to a gig. One, for fear that somebody would just nick it, right? And two, like for fear that it would break or that I'm going to drop the thing and or whatever, because they're just so freaking expensive, right? Anyway, point being, like, I don't really expect these little heads to sound like I just want them to be mostly in the ballpark, right? Because for me, I think, it's interesting that you bring up it as like a backup. Like that is a great use case for it, and one I would never think of. But for me, like these are the perfect, like, sit them on your rack of amp, right? Like this is just for like that case where I have a client that comes in that's just like, I just really want the Soldano sound, and I go, hey, I got this little guy that does that pretty well, right? It's not a SLO 100, but it's close enough, and I only need to do the one thing, and I don't care that it doesn't have a clean channel because I'm not using it that way, right? Like, so I definitely agree. I think they're super cool in concept, and obviously you want to know if it sounds like the original or not, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as like it sounds good on its own, and it can do the things it's telling you it's supposed to do, which it obviously does. Then it's good enough, right?
Yeah, here's another use case I just thought of because of what you just said. If you had a client that came in, say they wanted that sound, use an AB box, you send one signal direct right in, you have them track through that so they get, the air moving in the room and like the vibe of the Soldano, and then you could just use the plugin from Neural DSP to find, you know what I mean? Yeah. If you really wanted to, like that's not out of the realm of possibility. And obviously, like you said, you listened to a demo where they were able to get really similar tones once you actually plugged it in. Because one thing that I like about this, and one of the people that worked on the details confirmed this because it was a similar kind of design, the same little lunchbox. You don't need a load connected to this. So you can run it without a cabinet late at night, have it go in out from the send of the actual head straight into your DAW. And what do you know? If you have even one of the Neural DSP plugins, say you just had the Corey Wong one, you didn't have the Soldano, you have access to all those IRs. You have access to all the microphones and stuff like that. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I personally, I'm with you. I think the killer feature is the effects loop, right? I mean, really, it just means that it's like they're essentially selling a 30-watt amplifier, clean amplifier that also, if you want, will do an SLO sound, right? Like, because arguably, like if I was going to use it for a live machine, what I would do is hook the effects loop up to, either the Stomp or something like the Kraken preamp pedal that I have, or, even something on the clean side, right? To kind of get rid of the weakness of the fact that the SLO doesn't have a clean, preamp really going for it. And then you're switching between the two. You've got, a 30 watt output that's probably, it's not the best, but it's probably good enough to run most things through. And then you've got, kicking SLO leads on top of it or whatever. You've immediately got, two full amps channels worth of stuff in front of you for, what'd you say, $250 there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's better than buying like a pedal baby, right? The orange. Those things are like, I think $400, and yeah, the Class D wattage or whatever might sound a little bit better with some other stuff because it's tuned a little bit nicer or whatever, but it's a lot more, and you don't get the preamp in front of it, right? So definitely super cool that it's got the effects loop. That to me definitely makes it more versatile than just like, I think some of the other ones that do they all have effects loops? Even the Diesel and the Friedmans? I don't remember them all having them.
I think some of them do, but not all of them. I can't confirm that off the top of my head. I wasn't, the only ones I ever really considered were the Bogner and the Friedman. I never really looked too deep into the Diesel, but I don't think you could really go wrong here. And I know it might sound like we're being like overly positive to some people, because a lot of people are being very critical of this, and you know, I can't get on board with that. And the reason I can't get on board with that is because it's priced so low that like nobody is buying this thinking that they're getting a super lead. And if you think that, then you have other problems that need to be addressed. But like, I see this as something that anybody can look at and be like, this is cool. This is affordable. And right now, affordable is such a big thing to take into consideration. And it's fun. I think it's great. And I'm going to transition out of this because I think we've said pretty much everything we wanted to say about it. But I'll lead into a thing that you could do. You started to talk about this. What if this amp technically has one weakness, and that is cleans at volume? Mm-hmm. What if you use something that is based solely around cleans, like one of the new universal audio pedals? You run that through the effects loop, that will bypass all of it, and then you have a lot of options too, because what you could do is, if you get one of the Fender ones, I wouldn't recommend getting the Tweed with it, because the Tweed is a really grindy sounding amp. It's awesome. I love the 57 Tweeds. It's one of the most recorded amps of all time, but you already have gain on board pretty much with this thing. So the way I would look at it is, I'd be picking between the Ruby, or I'd be picking between the Dream. The Dream is based on the Deluxe Reverb, and the Ruby is based on the AC30. So you could either go for a really British style clean tone or edge of breakup, and then full on whatever, like from the actual head itself, or you could go in the Fender direction if you wanted the spring reverb and the stuff like that emulated. I think at that point, if you bought both of those things, that's $650. You use what I use right now, which is that Harley Benton cabinet that you told me to buy that has the Celestian Chinese-made V30 in it. Yeah. And how much is that out the door? $800, and then you get a pretty believable Vox Fender sound, depending on which universal audio pedal you're going to get. And then the fun of the Soldano. I mean, look how expensive amps are. What is a Blues Junior now? Like it's the same price. It's $850. And they're built like shit. Like they're not built particularly well.
Right. And I think, the biggest upside to that is you'd be 112 cab, arguably a pedal-sized amp, and then a pedal-sized actual amp. Like, I mean, your whole rig you could fit in a backpack if you wanted to, and it would be pretty solid and, solid state. So it's probably never really going to fail on you. I mean, that would be super cool. I love this like concept. And we talked about this when I bought the Kraken preamp pedal too, where it's just like, how do I expand the rig in a way that, makes size sense, and then makes, you're not like, I don't know. I feel like it used to just be, you bought a good clean amp that like took pedals well, and then you were doing like pedal dancing with, trying to find the right pedal that worked with that right amp or whatever. And then you're getting like a great clean amp with like maybe some compromised drive tones, right? Cause you're working out of pedals, right? And now you have this concept where you're like, I'm just going to buy a fantastic gain heavy amp and just go through the effects loop and get something else that does this, clean thing great or whatever from a pedal. And like, or I can do a whole nother type of gain, right? I can do a whole nother, preamp that's heavy, and we get totally different sounds, and we just expand the amp as many places as we want. It's such a cool like idea, and I'm glad that UAD is really like grabbing onto this and sort of saying like, hey, we're going to offer different pieces. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point maybe that, like the OXO, that they do maybe a multi something with more of these options together, which I think would be interesting to see kind of what they do on that side, because I know everybody loves the OXO. Is that's what it's called?
The
right?
Ox,
yeah. So I think that'd be kind of interesting if they did the other side of that, which would be the amp side. But even, I mean, at $400, obviously with a bunch of these presets and stuff, like these pedals definitely look like they're cool for this single space. And I think, I haven't heard them. I know you said that they sound great, and I trust you on that. But, and I mean, it's UAD, so obviously I'm sure that they would. But it's cool space, and I'm glad that more people are jumping into this little area.
And if I'm not recalling this correctly, I apologize, but I got sucked into one of those 45-minute videos that we were talking about earlier, except there was no playing. It was just talking. They were talking to the guys from UAD at Sweetwater, and they actually incorporated the IRs in the same way as the aux. So the emulations that you're getting, the speaker outs, they're going to be really good, the ones that come with it. And I did order one. It will be here on Tuesday. Which one do you think I went with?
I'm going to say the Dream. I think that to me looks like the one I'd go
obvious.
With. Yeah. No,
but I didn't.
No.
I didn't.
You got me.
I bought the Ruby.
Wow. Well, look at you.
I've been itching. No, and there are two reasons for that. First of all, I missed that amp I sold you. That's not bullshit.
Yeah.
I really like the AC4. But I was like, the AC4 is about the same price. And I also get the vibrato, the tremolo. So, a little bit more flex. Yep. And then I run it through the little Soldano, and all of a sudden I have some stuff to work with here. And I'm excited to give it a shot. You know what I mean? It kind of scratches the itch. And if I don't love it, I'm going to get like 90% of my money back on it. And just in case anybody is listening to this, I know Sweetwater is sold out of these things. Okay? Now, I'm telling you this in confidence. This is nothing shady. I ordered it from Tolman. Two reasons for that. First of all, they had the Ruby in stock. Second reason is $386 total shipped to my door, to the United States, with 3-day shipping. So it's less by a substantial margin. You don't pay the sales tax, and I think they're $359 on Tolman's website. You pay $20, whatever the difference, what I said, on the shipping, takes you to $386 is what I spent on that pedal. So if you would like that, I just checked before we started shooting this. They have the Ruby, and they have the Woodrow. I believe they're sold out of the Dream for 4 or 5 weeks. But if you want either of those two, pick it up from Tolman, and you wouldn't be hurting your old buddy Jim for saving you a few dollars. Use the affiliate link down below. I never whore myself out like that, but this is a good deal, and they're not available right now. Do it. Do it. But, I mean, there's one other thing that I want to talk about here before we wrap this up, and we're going to stay here in kind of the pedal / emulation. This is weird for me, man. Like, and I'm actually excited. How off is this? I'm excited about a little solid state amp.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about a fake amp pedal. And that, like, this is so backwards, man. My life is a oh man, it's a cacophony of errors. All right. So 2 notes. Dave did not know this existed until right before this either. Now, this is one that I haven't heard in an honest thing, because I'm not sure that there's many out there. If there is a demo of this thing that's like in depth, please post a comment and let me see it. It's called the ReVolt. Basically, it's an all analog signal path with a 12AX7, kind of like those old Vox Valvetronics Dave and I were laughing about. But you get Fender, you get Vox, and you get Marshall, all 3 selectable channels in it. You get the cab emulated outputs from the captor style. You get an effects loop. You can change how you want it, 4 cable method or direct in. This thing, to me, it has one feature on it that I wish the Universal Audio had, and it's the same price, $400. This, because you can run direct to the PA without any other kind of, interface, so to speak, or intermediary piece of gear. You can't do that with the UA if you're going to be running it through the effects loop of the amp, unless the amp has a DI out already on it. I like this in theory. Yeah. I like this a lot in theory. I don't know how it's going to sound. I can't judge it on that. It also comes with the wall of sound stuff. We should be seeing these in September, but I know you have good experience with two notes. So what are your thoughts about this thing?
I'm like,
unheard.
Yeah, unheard. Although I did actually just do a quick check, and there's a few videos up here from NAMM that actually don't have very many views, but so I'll have to check them out, I think, after we're done here talking. But yeah, but I'm a little, so cautiously optimistic, right? I really like the idea, and I mean, this is exactly what we were just talking about with the UAD pedals. Like, it's a bigger version, and for the same price, right? So you've got multiple types of amp sounds, which is super cool. And like you said, I really like the 2-note stuff, right? Like, so I use a captor all the time. Obviously, you know, the Studio Live or whatever is like the bread and butter of every YouTuber ever, right? But that being said, like, they're really, you know, the only stuff I'm familiar with is their cab modeling stuff. And to be totally fair, I really only use the captor as a load box, right? I use all own hammer stuff and, you know, a bunch of other things. Not that the 2-note stuff has ever sounded bad. I just prefer the simplicity, honestly, of the own hammer stuff. I just load a WAV file and it just sounds good. I don't have to go in and like mess with mics and, you know, placement and all that kind of stuff or whatever, which it's nice that it's there. I prefer not to use it, right? Like, own hammer's already done that for me. So, you know, barring the thing sounding horrible, which I don't think it will, you know, I think it'll probably be a good value. I don't love the tube thing, you know, mostly just because I think it's kind of just like a BS like marketing technique to be like, look, there's a tube in it. But you know, I mean, I had one of those Valve I still have a Valvetronics, right? Like, and it's not terrible. I don't think that tube is doing anything. It's been in there for, you know, with the 15 years I've had it or whatever, and I've never, you know, had to replace it or do anything. It gets orange though when I turn it on, so that's cool. But I don't know. I mean, I think it'll probably sound great just based on their history, right? I mean, and they work with enough people that would call them out on it if it was really, really terrible, that I think they'll probably put some decent effort in. And I mean, at that price point, it's pretty good. I'm definitely curious to see more.
I'm also cautiously optimistic, but the thing that really sells me on this is the price. Because what is a Captor X these days? Is it $600 now?
The Captor X, yeah. Here, let me Google it real quick.
I think it is. While you're verifying here, because I think that's $600. And granted, it's a totally different purpose. However, as a failsafe here, again,
yep,
that's not terrible. And if it sounds pretty good, yeah, I mean, you're in the ballpark. And one of the reasons I started to look into any of these things to begin with here, I got the Soldano because I love just sometimes pretending that I play hard rock. I really do. People that watch this channel would never believe it, but I have my moments where I make sure nobody's home. I crank the delay like everybody else, and I attempt to really just to play like I'm from the 80s. I love it. It's fun for me, so I'd rather invest in something like that. I don't have to worry about burning tubes either. That's something that's important to me about the Mesas. I want something that's going to be, you know, long-term, not that, but as far as the Vox stuff goes, if that, the Universal Audio, the Ruby, if that thing works out, that solves a lot of problems for me with YouTube too. Because then I could just run, you know, 2 drive pedals in front of it and then just go direct in, stuff like that. Granted, I won't have the stuff in the room, but I will be able to work at night. And with the current workflow I have, once little one's asleep, Mace is not getting turned on, and I'm not using plugins. I can't do it. I don't care how good they sound. I can't do it.
What's funny is I'm sure that, you know, for the most part that UAD pedal is basically a plugin in a pedal, but you know,
I know, but it's a mental thing. It's a mental thing, and and it's why I was okay with the Quad Cortex, unless the damn thing came with the freaking plugins in it like it was supposed to.
Yeah. Well, I also like that this thing solves, like you're talking about, solves the problem of being able to do the multi-outs, right? Like, clearly the UAD pedals are not trying to solve the same problem. I think they're more going for you have an amp, you have a setup, you're trying to add an extra channel of an amp that you wouldn't normally get out of it. Or, you know, the other thing is like, yeah, I just want to plug straight into the computer. I want a great sounding amp. I want a great sounding cab, and I don't want to think about it, right? Like this, clearly the 2-notes is going for a broader kind of thing, which is like, this could be the hub for my whole pedal rig, right? Like, you have a couple of pedals, you know, you could set up a decent sized pedal board that covers your entire thing, and that's your entire rig, nothing else. You don't, you know, so it'd be interesting. I think, like, we're kind of pitting them against each other, like they're similar, but I think they're really sort of meant for probably 2 different audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, but I think it's just fun to look at the pros and cons of each, you know, and let people come to their own conclusions on what might work best for them. Because at the end of the day, whatever gear you buy, it doesn't matter if it's a guitar, a pedal, or an amp, what anybody on the internet says does not matter. Does it work for you? Do you like the sounds? Do you have fun? Does it inspire you to write and record music? Because if not, you got the wrong shit.
A moment of zen. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Maybe I'll edit that out, and maybe we'll have to do it, and we'll go from there. But in case, you got anything useful out of this, let us know in the comments. Let me know what you're hyped about from NAMM, anything that we didn't talk about. Obviously, we did not talk about any of the guitars themselves. Maybe we'll hit that after the show fully kind of does its recap and stuff like that. But today, Dave wanted to talk about the Soldano. I got the Soldano, thought it was fun, and the other stuff is on the way. So, like the podcast, like the channel, comment, subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.